Hey friends, my name is Allison Steele, and you're listening to Unravel with Allison. Unravel with Allison is a show where I take a concept that's got me in knots, and we unravel it together. Thanks for being here. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Unravel with Allison. Land has been a big topic for me lately, so we're going to chat about it. The obvious here with land is property, and I have a lot to celebrate in that department. Land is also an ending or a stopping point, a place to disembark. It can be anticipated as a stopping point until you're actually there. When your then becomes now, it turns into life. So what seemed to be anticipated as a pit stop is actual real life when you finally get there. And before I moved, I'd get so worried thinking ahead to all the times that I'd be without whatever resource that I think I'd need. I'd panic in regards to my lack and panic in regards to my abundance, but I didn't consider the reality of what it's like when I'm actually there. Like when I was pregnant and I would read what to expect when you're expecting, but a month in advance. So when I was 3 months pregnant, I was reading about the 4th month. And then I also used like 3 different apps to track my pregnancy because I like the variety of it. And it was fun and cute. And I got to learn a lot about my body, but I was completely disregarding the reality, not completely, but I was not set up for the actual kid in the house. I should have been preparing more for the existence of that child rather than focused in so much on the here and now of my day to day because I was planning for so much. There was so much being done. There was so much to be prepared for. And by the time she got here, we were ready for her, but it was like in crunch time, needing support again from my family before she got here. But anyway, as we know now, I've moved in with my sister, and my mom has helped a lot in that process here too. And I've heard her explain my scenario to people a few times. She delicately calls it a place to land. So if somebody asks what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, what my plans are, what happened, whatever, she says that I'm out of gas and I needed a place to land. When I first moved, I had a little bit of free time after the kids were asleep one night, and I decided to pick up a book and read it for real. And I sat down and I dove into Tuesdays with Morrie. Mitch Albom is the author. The book is about his relationship with his college professor, Morrie, who is dying. So during Morrie's last few months, he reflects on some of life's major topics, and Mitch reflects on it all with them, and they jokingly call it the last thesis. But there is a section that I'd like to share with you here, and it's a flashback to when Mitch was in college in one of Morrie's classes. It's my junior year, 1978, when disco and Rocky movies are all the cultural rage. We are in an unusual sociology class, something Morrie calls group process. Each week we study the ways in which the students in the group interact with one another, how they respond to anger, jealousy, attention. We are human lab rats. More often than not, someone ends up crying. I refer to it as the touchy-feely course. Morrie says I should be more open-minded. On this day, Morrie says he has an exercise for us to try. We are to stand facing away from our classmates and fall backward, relying on another student to catch us. Most of us are uncomfortable with this, and we cannot let go for more than a few inches before stopping ourselves. We laugh in embarrassment. Finally, one student, a thin, quiet, dark-haired girl whom I noticed almost always wears a bulky white fisherman sweater, crosses her arms over her chest, closes her eyes, leans back, and does not flinch, like one of those Lipton tea commercials where the model splashes into the pool. For a moment, I'm sure she's going to thump on the floor, and at the last instant, her assigned partner grabs her shoulders and yanks her up partially. Whoa, several students yell, some clap. Morrie finally smiles. You see, he says to the girl, you closed your eyes. That was the difference. Sometimes you cannot believe what you see. You have to believe what you feel. And if you're ever going to have other people trust you, you must feel that you can trust them too, even when you're in the dark, even when you're falling. Such a good book. I used to feel through the world with this anxious tension, waiting for something to go wrong or excited for things to go right, just an energetic jumble that stayed with me in an anticipation of an undefined something. but I wasn't much of a dreamer. And the energy that was available to me, it's the energy of creation. And I only allowed my imagination to be used for practical purposes and problem solving, not dreaming and hoping and wishing beyond my clear boundaries and limitations. But when I first began addressing this energy again, I let it eat me alive. And then I learned why it was there. And then I learned what to do with it. And now I get to alchemize it. I spent so much time learning how to feel better that I think I might feel better. I think I'm past the point now of where, like, instead of combating the overload of this energetic pressure, I'm learning how to maintain it in the day-to-day. And I see that it's not a cup full, cup empty, cup thing. It's available when it's available. You can bring it in when it's not there, but you can't send it off. You got to do something with it. I got a phone call the other day when I was writing this episode, and I ended the phone call with that energy, that nervous tension, body shake, excitement, and I had a direction for it, and it felt so good. But the entire time during the phone call, it was like synchronicity after synchronicity after synchronicity. And it all came in while I was writing this episode, because when I do my episodes, I kind of write them backwards. Like, I think I have a point and then I'm trying to figure out how I got there. And then by the time I figure out how I got there, I'm like, oh, okay, so we just did that all backwards, but now I understand what I meant to say at the beginning. So I do my little Unravel research. And I was thinking about this trust fall with Tuesdays with Maury. I knew I wanted to talk about it. So I think of my experience with trust fall. And I thought about my friend Brandon. And I know when I met him, I wrote an Instagram post about him, and it involved the trust fall. So I went to look at that Instagram post, and as soon as I pulled it up, another picture of him showed up because it was the little icon next to his name because he was calling me. And I'm like, this is too cool. And we talked for about an hour. And like I said, that energy is just like, it's there, it's happening, stuff is here, it's ready. Go and do something with your life. So I came back to writing this episode, and I love where we go from here. Okay. When I wrote that post, it says, the universe wove a synchronous web. You could call it a trust fall or a leap of faith, but really I dove in head first and I was met with the same energy. Brandon and Mary, y'all are beautiful people and gracious hosts. Thank you for the hospitality, universal love, and reconnection of the soul family. Later in the episode, I'm going to talk about soul families again. But when I first wrote that Instagram post, I had a different idea of what a soul family was. I believed that like our human souls were a singular entity, so that when I die, this version of Allison will end up reincarnated after coming up with a plan of how to help and support this new wave of whatever I enter into the earth. And the plan involves family and different groups that share and go and play together. And we don't recognize it when we're here necessarily as our plan, but when we meet each other, we recognize each other as each other. We'll find each other in the world. I believed I served that purpose even if I didn't understand it yet. And I believed heavily in the chance meetings and the everything happens for a reason kind of stuff. When I felt at home instantly with a stranger, they became partners and lovers and best friends. There's an instantaneous notion of I am you, you are me, and we are we. But that was an awesome phone call, and even though so much has changed about what I believe, and even what he believes, the essence of the trust fall is safe in our friendship, and him calling me as I read that is just that justification of our flow and what our friendship means. That's rooted in my faith of knowing what's right for me. When we have that individual recognition of our sovereignty and what that means to us individually, when we embody that, we always fall back into place together. When we need each other, they're available in the exact way we need them. And they're excited to share exactly what I need to hear or vice versa. And it's especially cool if we don't exactly need anything from each other, because by the time we separate, we realize like, oh, I really did need to hear that. This was fun. I'm amused. You amused me. You inspired me. You are my muse to go do this next thing. And we get to share that with each other. There's confirmation all around us that things are going right. But sometimes the universe really shoves it in your face. When I talk about things being right for me, there's a lot that I do that I wouldn't consider up my alley, but that I still participate in, or something that I wouldn't put myself in a position necessarily to do, but that I do because of the people that I get to be around when I do it. But because it's not mine in that sense, it does lack that I am you, you are me, we are we. It carries more of this, I am me, you are you, and we are here together. I did it, but it was orchestrated by them, or I opted in to participate because I enjoyed these people. But there is a difference between tagging along and following your heart. And when I had my journeys, they were mostly about tagging along. And I love tagging along. And mostly I didn't have time to come up with anything myself to do. But like there'd be a guest director on my show is kind of what it felt like. Like someone swooped in and said, hey, we're doing this next season. I'm like, okay, cool, I'm in. I was talking to my parents about how I didn't find my passport during my move. And we were like discussing timelines of our trips and renewal and whatnot. So my mom's side of the family was talking about our trip to the Bahamas on a Disney cruise. And my dad was like, was that before or after the trip of our side of the family going to the Dominican Republic to the all-inclusive resort? And I'm like, I have done a lot. I've done a lot of things, but it always felt like that guest director kind of thing. Like, yeah, I went to the Bahamas. We went snorkeling and we played Disney. That's not how I would have planned my own personal trip to the Bahamas, but I still had a blast. It was a beautiful experience, but there's a weird thing when I do plan my own trips, when I only have to consider myself. My considerations are so small that the delight is overwhelming. I get to prioritize my own preferences. I get to trust that I'll be happy as long as I try something new, and that when I get there, I'll have what I need. And like, yeah, maybe I'll hit a Walmart or something, but pretty much going and doing is a challenge in and of itself. It's learning how to be yourself again. Seeing what you're like when you're alone. And when you don't worry about fitting in and you just worry about feeling in. Okay, so I've never had a sleepaway camp experience as a kid. But like my family, we've been tent camping and we've stayed in cabins and all that. But like that overnight structure thing that you see in the movies, the coming of age, the rite of passage thing, never had that. So that's what I think that is when I watch those movies and think those things, like the energy of sleepaway camp is how I want to feel when I travel. High vibes, low expectations, excited to see what comes up next, willing to try new things, sharing profound, brief connections, exhausted by the time I lay my head down. So when I think about my trips with my family, it feels like a family vacation. Not like the crazy movies, but like I close my eyes and those are my family vacations, and how lucky am I for that, you know? And then when I think of the trips I structure, I get to go to summer camp. And for me, when I feel like a kid, that's the vacation I'm looking for in my mind. And when I say feel like a kid, it's different than feeling like a kid is different than actually being a kid. Because as I was a kid, like after learning about astrology, it makes sense why I feel like I was always sad and inadequate. The planets were not on my side. But I really did feel like a quiet, nervous kid. That's not the kid I'm referring to. I'm referring to the parts where I was curious and wanted to learn and wanted to play and had questions to ask and felt like I mattered when the adults answered them and when I had genuine exchanges with the adults. I loved feeling like a kid in that way. I had an IQ test when I was 7 years old, and I found the results of it recently, and I was, listen to what my examiner wrote. Allison approached each task enthusiastically and asked if she could return each day of the week. Even as test items became increasingly more difficult, Allison requested more items, especially when doing math. Allison's approach to the assignment in general seems to indicate that she has an insatiable appetite for learning. But the problem with adults evaluating children is they don't remember where we're coming from. They don't remember what it feels like to be a kid with a limited vocabulary, to express themselves, to be supported and understood. So as a kid being evaluated, I liked learning. But in my head as a kid in that room, I liked playing. I had an insatiable appetite for play. And the learning was a byproduct. because playing for me includes a challenge. I like being challenged. I like having something to show for myself. I like being creative. I like continuity. I like success. I like progress. And learning is fun. But that insatiable drive, that's not to learn. That's play. I don't want to vacate. I want to go camp. I don't want to escape and disassociate. I want to go explore and create. I'm just at a point in life where I'm over the circumstantial challenges. And I feel that I miss that anxious tension that I used to be afraid of. When I see it as that creative energy, I miss playing with it. I feel like I'm just at the batting cages and the balls keep coming, but for some reason I keep feeding the machine and I'm like, where is this value exchange going wrong? Why do I keep feeding this? How do I keep feeding this? I see that this is entirely around values and beliefs and where I need to feed that attention value elsewhere. I want an intentional challenge. I want to do something again for myself. And I'm still celebrating over here. I'm still appreciating my circumstantial challenges. My 3-year-old son is now potty trained. That is the biggest deal. I have been changing diapers for 5 whole years, and now I don't have to. I'm still learning that I have to carry around wet wipes 24/7 because they're yucky, but I don't have to change any more diapers. My point to all of this, it's like the thing happens, but where do we land on how to tell it, how to experience it? What is your truth in those given circumstances? Because it's like, I'm not someone who really does that, but like I do that. I've done that, but not like that. So the context always seems to matter. And in that, you start claiming more land because everybody else does it too. When you start talking and getting into these conversations, like nobody really travels like that to claim a real vacation to the Bahamas. Say you went to the Bahamas if you went to the Bahamas. And beyond just claiming it, like one of my favorite games is to find a truthful way to be overly dramatic, describing something in the most outlandish way to where it's still true, but also maybe questionable. It is an intentional distortion for fun, for drama, to be silly. So like there's a bruise on my knee right now. The joke here would be like Hootie and the Blowfish. Instead of singing, I only want to be with you, you say, oh my God, it's black and blue. Okay. That's a joke. That's a joke in the easy way of how to distort and make funny. In a complicated way, it's like that scene in Orange is the New Black where they're talking about a movie. And Morella asks like, hey, did you ever see that one where there's this cowboy and he's like king of the castle? And then this astronaut shows up and he tries to take over. And so the cowboy tries to murder him, but instead the astronaut's taken hostage by an evil psychopath. And then the cowboy has to rescue him. But then they end up becoming really good friends. And they're like, Toy Story? Yeah, Toy Story. I love that movie. You know, like that's the game in my head that I play. But as a kid, I was angry when I was taken out of context when I shared it. Like I remember trying to like workshop a version of Little Deuce Coupe by the Beach Boys, but using the lyrics from Boot Scoot and Boogie by Brooks and Dunn. And I'm singing this to myself and my dad's like, hey, you know that those words are not for that song. And I'm like, yeah, okay. But anytime I tried to explain myself, I would get so frustrated when people thought I was just stupid or I didn't know what I was talking about. It's like, I know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm hilarious. Why don't you get this? Where do we land? You know, because I hate that feeling when I think someone thinks I'm an idiot. So those little parts of myself that were fun for me, but just really added nothing. I hid those little things from society. Primarily because I hated when someone thought I was stupid or I'd mispronounce something on purpose and someone thought I did it by accident. Like it's just really an annoying way to have to defend yourself to be fun, but then to not defend yourself is also annoying. This is also kind of where like my issues with authority came into play here growing up, because like if there's 3 of us and 2 of you don't think I'm funny, then in this context, I'm just not funny. And that's okay. Frustrating as a kid, but okay. As we get older, though, like stories get awkward and convoluted in middle school and then perverted in high school. And then they're just like, I don't know, wild as adults. They're still here. There's stories about me that exist that I don't even agree with, or some of them I don't even know about, I'm sure. And people who know and believe in those stories see me as that person. And sometimes I don't even have a say of who you think I am or why that energy is coming my way. And I do this to other people too. For a while, I had a really strong reaction to a woman. Her face, her name, any association to my knowing her. Anything that made me think about the situation she was involved in my life made my blood just boil. Like I had a full body visceral reaction. My skin would turn pink and hot. My jaw would be slammed shut. I would have tears in my eyes. I was a rage monster. But I never had to be around this person. But any indication of her existence sent my nervous system into a frenzy. And so I was in an Al-Anon meeting one day, which is supposed to be like the safest place. And this woman walked in who looked basically identical. And I could hardly participate in the meeting because their existence mirrored my rage. It just triggered something that I'm usually able to compartmentalize, and it was game over. And the whole room feels nasty. And I didn't even realize what was happening until she made eye contact with me and basically like flinched. And I caught myself. I knew I had the ugliest, most hateful look on my face. Just this genuine hate and passionate rage in my eyes staring at this woman. This energy is not okay to share. But that horrible exchange forced me to face myself about it. When I recognized that what I'm doing isn't okay, you got to take care of it. I worked my way out of that one by forcing me to watch a show I wanted to watch, but that actually had that name as the main character. So I had to hear it over and over and over and over again. That really solved the issue for that, by the way. Hated this person. Made me want to throw up when I thought about them. I just watched a show with the name of the same character and was like, nope, that person, not that person, not that person, not that person. And it went away. And now I liked a new show and none of those other issues bothered me. There are easy ways to make yourself feel better. And again, the point here is context. When is it okay to distort reality? When do you recognize that your reality is distorted? When do you realize the impact it has on others? My mom was getting on my nerves the other day when she was asking me, trying to cheer me up. And I was like, not cheerful, but not in a bad mood, but felt like I needed to be something, like that what I wasn't okay right there. And I felt okay. So that's where my frustration was coming from. And I looked at her and I said, respectfully, what do you think my problem is? And she told me what she thinks my problem is. And I was like, okay, you are correct. That is my problem. It's not weighing on me right now. And I am looking forward to what we're doing and all of these things. Like, I'm cool. So can you stop trying to make me feel better? Because I don't, like, this will work. What we're doing, our endeavor, I'm excited to do this with you. She's like, well, your projection is otherwise. I'm like, okay. And that makes sense. Because I'm sure I don't look cheerful and joyful. The things that she thought I was worried about, I'm not worried about, but they are on my mind, and I'm playing that song in my head. I'm working my way out of it before we even talked about it. But it was almost like her trying to cheer me up was interrupting my natural flow of like adjusting naturally to the next thing. Like, I'm like, okay, we're getting out of this mode and turning into this mode, and I'm here for it. And talking about it, like, we had an awesome time after that. We had to recognize the impact we were having on each other. And it took a 40-second conversation. So recognizing the context is important. And asking when you should insist on logic versus when you should insist on feeling. And recognizing that blending the two is typically the answer. But as a child, when do we learn to differentiate the experience? Because as a child, like I said, it feels one way, but we're told it's another. My kids are exploring context. And like jokes I mentioned before, if nobody laughs, I'm not funny, no matter how hilarious I think I am. So when my son throws something across the room that he knows he's not supposed to throw across the room, and now there's a mess and nobody's laughing, and he looks at me and says, that was a joke. Buddy, read the room. You know, Context matters. My daughter is toying with this stuff right now too, and she gets the context so wrong. Like she has this big imagination right now, and then she also likes to hide things right now. So I'll ask her about her day and she'll make up some story, or I'll ask her about something and she'll pretend to be clueless, like she's never heard of it before. Like explain it to me like I'm 5 is hilarious because she's 5. And then also like, I think she just likes to have conversations with people. That's how I was. But then she'll get me talking for like 5 minutes and then she'll be like, hey mom, you believe me? And I'm like, yeah, of course I did. I always do. I believe you when you talk to me. And I did all of those things as a kid too, mostly because I was bored, sometimes because I needed connection. Most of the time I was just being a silly goose, and she is too. But now we talk about context. Like if you go hide in a store and I have to search for you and I say, Charlie, and you pop out, that's funny. If I'm scared and I don't know where you are, but you immediately show me that nothing is scary, that is okay. And that is funny. If you hide my stuff, that's okay. That's silly. But if I need my stuff and I have to look for it for a long time, that's not silly. So she mostly gets it. And it's pretty hilarious. But I've started having to do like a checkpoint for context, and she is devastated by it when it doesn't serve its purpose. So like, if I'm looking for my keys, it's time to go. My house is small, so if I cannot find them, I immediately assume she took them. So I have to ask her, did you take them? She'll tell me no. I'll pause again and remind her, it's really time for us to go right now. If you give me the keys right now, it's still funny. But I'm going to keep looking for the keys. And if you bring them to me later, it's not going to be funny. So about a third of the time, whatever the situation is, I get what I'm looking for. But 2/3 of the time, I'm breaking her heart. And she immediately starts welling up and she's like, please, mom, I'm telling the truth. Don't you believe me? And in my head, I'm like, no, until I have my keys, I don't believe anything. But she's a big believer and I try to navigate this delicately. I try to let her be a silly goose as much as possible without getting too fussy or breaking her spirit. But I still do react a lot more than like stop, pause, and respond. But I let her ask all kinds of questions, and I'll never tell her flat out that nobody knows an answer to something, but I'll give her perspectives. So like if she'll ask me a question that nobody knows the answer to, I'll say like, I believe A, B, and C. Dad thinks X, Y, and Z. And we're going to grandma's later. You can ask her about it and see what she thinks tomorrow. Like, she's got a lot of wild what if scenarios, and they're places that I don't want to take my mind to. But I'll give her the answers. And also I'll tell her like, yeah, that happens sometimes, but I've never met anyone who's had that happen before personally. It's never happened to me. And I've been here for a long time. And then I'll let her decide where to land. But the possibilities are endless. So I try not to give her just answers. I try to give her ideas. And I didn't love the idea of sending her to public school or private school. I don't know. I don't have the capacity to homeschool her, and I don't know that I could. I think what I want for her doesn't exist yet. My spirit was just shattered in school. The kids were really mean, and I would get in trouble for stuff that I didn't understand all the time. I didn't feel comfortable asking for help when I needed it. I didn't believe what I was being taught. But the part where I didn't believe what I was being taught was the toughest one to overcome. And that's hard because it's like the funny thing. It's like when I know I'm funny, but I know you don't agree. You can say that with something objective like funny, but when there's a textbook that backs up what a teacher is telling you and everybody believes it elsewhere, but it feels wrong. Yeah, I'm going to give myself a headache trying to learn it because it's important, I guess, but it's just hard for me because I don't want her to have to navigate it. And maybe she'll never have to. Maybe this will never be on her radar. Maybe she'll be comfortable with everything she learns, and maybe not. I got a message from her teacher last week that said, hey there, Charlie just learned that unicorns aren't real and she is sobbing. We were discussing real life and nonsense things. And then she had the monkey face emoji hiding the eyes, said, just wanted to make you aware. So I thanked her for it. But I'm like, are you kidding me? She's 5. She loves unicorns. Let her have them. We've used unicorns to discuss power and magic and energy Like, she understands so much important stuff from this fake thing. She connects to important topics through this vessel. So I'm like upset because I'm not ready for her to lose it. I want her to know and believe in her heart that anything is possible. And I used to roll my eyes at the Disney wish upon a star stuff. Anything your heart desires will come to you. Nope. When I tried it, I didn't actually like believe it, but then it also never came true. So I didn't believe in magic, but I would try it in those ways. Like, I'll sit down and do the Ouija board, but nothing happens. So when I gave up and believed in anything and everything started to matter. Everything was real. Everything was magic and everything was energy. And I didn't want them to take that from her. We may not find a unicorn in the woods, but in our house, unicorns are not nonsense. I thought of all the different conversations that we could have to like ease this out, smooth it over, and make it okay for her. So when I go to pick her up from school, I'm being more of a brat than a mama bear about it. I changed my outfit so I'd wear my Bigfoot shirt when I pick her up. And I expect to see this sad little broken kid. And I pick her up and she's like skipping around, having a happy day. And I'm asking her how she's doing and she's cool. So we get in the car and I said, hey, I have a question about your day. Your teacher sent me a message. Is now a good time to talk about it? And she said, yeah. So I said, well, your teacher told me you had a hard time in class today when you were talking about unicorns. Can you tell me about it? So she's like, yeah, everybody was saying unicorns weren't real. And I was trying to tell them about it and nobody would listen. I said, so you had a hard time? She said, yeah, I went to the calm down spot. I sat by myself for a little bit. So I said, what part's hard for you? Nobody was listening and I was trying to talk. So like this poor teacher was trying to do her best, but she got it wrong. My daughter didn't come home that day believing that unicorns weren't real. My daughter was upset in class because it's not an open forum, unfortunately, and she didn't get to speak her mind and everybody else agreed on something that she didn't agree on. She's upset that nobody listened. And I need a timeout when that happens with me too. So I get it. And I pocketed all of my conversations for another day and just hung out with my happy kid who still believes in unicorn magic. It's really odd. And I try to be extremely honest with my daughter, like in an age appropriate way. But because everything has shifted in me, I believe in everything and nothing all at once. And that's why I try to give her more ideas and options than definitives. So if you have children in earshot, I'm going to speak openly about Santa and my rage around Christmas. So if you don't want to have those conversations in your life with little ears, turn me off. But I hate lying. It feels terrible in my body. And I hate being lied to unless you have permission to lie to me. My brother cooks for my family once a week, and he mentioned wanting to cook deer meat, but didn't know if I'd throw a fit or not. I told him I don't like that idea, but make it anyway and don't tell me. I don't want to know. And I completely forget about the conversation until the following week when we're cleaning up dinner and he asks what I thought of it. So I'm like, I've already thanked you for this meal and I've complimented your dish. We just ate Bambi. And in case you're wondering, that is exactly how you give somebody permission to lie to you. Other than that, I hate lying. So I'm taking issue with Christmas. First off, in like my teenage years, I used to take issue with the fact that like parents worked hard and Santa got all the credit. So I thought that as a parent, I would resent that. I don't. But that's a thing. Second, Elf on the Shelf, that is rude. I saw a TikTok the other day that was talking about our generation's phenomenon with that feeling of being watched and like how it was specifically amplified with the Truman Show. But yeah, I feel that and I felt that. And I was talking to my sister about it and like how it's just gotten worse and worse the more we've aged, or truer, I guess, the more we've aged. Because as children, it was like, hey, God is always watching. Jesus is always watching. Christmas time, Santa's watching. And now we've got elves in our home reporting back. Like cameras already existed, but they weren't instant when we were younger. You had to at least wait an hour to get them developed. And then there's video surveillance and all the everywhere. Those weren't there when I was a kid. hidden camera shows, and then everybody got camera phones. And America's Funniest Videos, you're afraid of looking stupid all the time. Social media, anybody can put anything they want, screenshot anything you say anytime, anything ever happens ever. Smartphones, data collection, all of this. We are being watched now more than ever. We've seen our friends embarrassed by videos. We've bullied businesses into terminating employees over tweets. We've heard stories of blackmail. So of course we feel like we're always being watched, and also that it's a bad thing. But we have always been watched. But for me, it's no longer allowed to be this anxious tug that convinces me not to exist too boldly. I'd probably have a blast staging that little elf, but you're not going to see one in my house affecting my kids' behavior. And again, third, lying sucks. Hate doing it. Let Santa be a story. Stop doing the milk and cookies and faking footprints and sneaking around and just call it. Tell the stories. Watch the movies. But stop acting like it's that real. That is so weird. It's so weird that we do this. And I don't remember how old I was when I learned that Santa wasn't real, but I don't remember how I heard about it or what was said. All I remember was I spent the whole day thinking about it. And logically, I was just like, yeah, of course. It's got to be our parents. So I go home and ask my parents, and they try to keep the dream alive. And they really thought they were doing the right thing, but I was fussy. And I convinced myself that this reality was the reality. And now it's I don't know. I couldn't comprehend how it could be anything but our parents at that point. So finally, when they caved, I was like, thank you. But then also I'm going to bed early. And I went to bed early because I wanted to cry. And I wanted to cry because it was a hard conversation. And I went to bed because I didn't want anyone to see me cry. And I knew if they saw me cry after our conversation, they would think that I'm crying because I learned Santa wasn't real. And I refused to let that be my story. I was really upset that we had to fight for so long and question the reality when it was so simple. And obviously now I'm not mad at anybody for how that played out. It's just a poor subject. And I think that we need to just drop it all together. Because I see the obvious parallels between my experience and what my daughter just went through. Except I had somebody to hear me out. But with the Santa issue, it's like we're devastated when they lose this innocence that we've manufactured on their behalf without their permission. At least with unicorns, there's still a level of mystery. Santa is a blatant, weird lie that we perpetuate on behalf of tradition, but it's weird. Early on, their father and I decided that we would do the Santa thing so that we would get that Christmas spirit vibe in our house since the kids are being raised without a religion. And I believe in Christmas spirit. I want that feeling in my home. I was game for this until they started asking questions. And now I'm only perpetuating the concept for everybody else's kids. But I'm bitter, obviously. My kids can understand the essence behind the reality when it comes to unicorns, okay? So that's what I want. That's what I want incorporated into whatever dream school I want for my kid that doesn't exist. They're in elementary school, learning the elemental building blocks. Everything needs a this, that, and the other. A tertiary union, a trinity. Everything you're exposed to should have a feel to it also. They're exposed to elements without essentials to back it up. They need the essential exposure as much as the elementary exposure, not in a way that they can just pick it up at home from their parents or taught as a separate subject. Because in any subject, you need that fusion. You need all three. Most of us need to pair a physical aspect with the mental input to essentially feel and connect to the knowledge in order to understand it, to practice it, to establish the wisdom. In one of my college classes, I was having a hard time comprehending something I was reading one day. So I stepped out of my studio, went back into the classroom and just told my teacher, my brain's not awake yet. I'm working on it. My brain does this sometimes. It's still early. I'm good. I just don't get what I'm reading yet. So my teacher's like, did you read it out loud? No. But why? Why are you asking me? And he's like, obviously, it initiates all the senses. You're inviting more people to the party. When your mouth speaks, when you use your vocal cords, you're initiating something. When your ears listen, you're inviting more to the party. You're inviting more connections. You're enlightening more patterns. It's easier comprehending coming from a voice you're familiar with. All of those connections matter on every level. So the connections matter. And now that I know I want connections, I'm back to the part where you have to do something. I want to one again for myself. I've supported the needs for so long. I've learned to be okay. And now that I am, I don't know what to do about it, but I feel like the universe does, and it's waiting for me. It's a give and take, but it's like, you couldn't have this until you got here. You wouldn't have wanted it till you got here. And it's almost ready for you. But it's so weird to claim in my weak moments. I do question it, but I know that my dream is marinating. I'm on the cusp of supporting my wants because my needs are finally covered. So I've been doing my own little alphabet coding for a while now, and I understand the letters as symbols in different ways. You can almost understand the words from how the letters are. So the letters in land are LAND. I understand A as my alpha, my personal channel to oneness. So it's like your tune that you're sending out, but there are listeners waiting for you to send something out. That's your broadcast tower, and those are your A's. N is the neutral flow. The capital letter N looks like a waveform, just up, down, up. It's a thing that happens, but it's not good or bad. It's just a notion of neutral continuation. And our D's are the deltas. They're the circumstantial interference. The delta is what you've been dealt, the situation that you're in. So if A and D is like my natural happenings among circumstances, where does that leave L? With a Greek coding, L is lambda. And that symbol is actually like the capital letter is an upside down V. And the lowercase is like an upside down Y. So they still give me that alpha energy. But it has that caged in thing too, where it's almost like the capital's almost a pyramid, casting the energy up and out. But it still has that vibe of what we send up to rain down, what we send out mentally that casts itself within our surroundings. And when I first dove into L, when I first was like working on this coding stuff and figuring out what these letters mean to me specifically, things got weird. L was odd. L has always been lost to me. Like, take the L. So when I talk about how our brains talk to us, I say that our brains are trying to impress us, but they can only do it. They can only express that energy to the capacity at which we're able to comprehend the energy. So with a first thought, we either need to direct it where to go. And if it seems like nonsense, we kind of just need to sit back and let it work itself out in a limited capacity. And I kind of did that. So when I allowed for this stream of consciousness, it was very playful. And this was early on when I still had a lot of binary tension, a this or that mindset. Definitely not like this, that, plus the other, but I had to choose just one of this or that, not welcome all three parts. And the way that L came through to me with all of my blocks, it was almost like L was the key to unlock my blocks. When you look into the present day use of lambda, the symbol today, it's used to represent the rate of decay, the time between failures. It always felt like loss, but then I saw it as a runway. I saw the L instead of the Y or the V upside down. I saw the L, and the horizontal line looks like your mark, your starting point. And the vertical line is like the boundary of the runway. So it's like you've chosen a starting point. You're ready to go. So L is the starting point, but it does indicate decay. It's both on purpose. But when I wrote this, it was hard. It was even hard to translate just to share with you right now because the handwriting is so chaotic. Like, this was a big energy stream of consciousness, but it was delivered so simply because my brain wouldn't comprehend it in a bigger way. And it's playfully conversational, but it does come across in a very Dr. Seuss kind of way. So when I read it to you here, like your Cat in the Hat, and the questioning voice or the statements that invite a response, those are also cat in the hat mocking. This wasn't like I intentionally prompt a question and then I get an answer. It was like, oh gosh, we're going to do this now. Okay, no, do it this way. You'll hear it. But just so you know, when I say it's conversational, there are certain conversational flows of consciousness that I have interrupted. I will interrupt the flow to ask a question because the flow is available for me to receive an answer. This one was just like felt through. I just wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote. I didn't stop and pause and ask. This was just like one perspective, like, oh, you think this? It's like those infomercials, like, oh, but wait, there's more. You think this, but you haven't seen this. So that's the vibe. And I'm going to read to you what I wrote for L. Take the L. Stolen from others, infinite ways they try to show, as above, so below. Happy and sad, kind and full, I see no difference, your cup is full. Will the door open? Yes, and soon. I force them through when there is no room. Time and space canvas, words are just words, vibrations unclear. What's on the other side of this polar divide? The choice is yours. But pain and fear keep me here. Love and pain are the same. You call to the ruler, yet here you are, aiming the shots at your siblings and stars. I see no way out and I feel boxed in. Will a door open? Where to begin? There is no way out until you begin. The character, the time, it's all right now. Take a deep breath and take a bow. Can we finish this story and start anew? I've tried to show you, but here is a clue. At first breath, your game begins. You render your process with family and friends. We integrate best with each breath, intention aligned to your highest hive mind. Survival supreme. You cry and scream. Reverberation sets motion we provide through the ocean. The storms you see are you and me. We clear and calm, yet you carry on. The answers you seek are lousy and meek. Intention of notion followed by motion cues the wheel to spin so you may feel again. Take a turn, show me you're real, cue up some options to render for real. Share space with others, and I will move time. The enclosure you created, sealed by the debated, it is outdated. The apple of creation from your godly representation, you bite, ignite, we shine the light. You embody this character trapped in this game. You can cap this as worst and render it out, or you continue to argue and I will continue to shout. You cannot hear me over them. Take a deep breath and start again. Choose your own adventure. Anything but this. Your pennies are pinched and you are not well. There is no way out and you call this hell. Every breath is a choice. Every breath is a choice to handle your shit. Notice the vibe and alchemize it. Regardless of preference, real or fake, initiate peace for humanity's sake. Initiate splendor and I'll render success. You know the algorithm, but to my dismay, the program's weighed down by confirmation displayed. Is this real? The tension you feel is false and real. These truths you seek will keep you weak. Trust your body, the system within. Remove the filters to program again. Think of anything better than this. Let go of results, answers, and truth. The matter that matters is that of your youth. I wrote this last year and it really started my drive on breathwork as a primary programming source. And that this whole exchange really changed my life. And I forgot how impactful it was. And even like rewriting it is very different than expressing it out loud right now. It doesn't matter how childish it comes across. It is impactful. Land is a starting point. L is a starting point. It's not the end. And it's okay that the idea to be initiated at all includes its degradation, decay, and death. Because we're not supposed to have everything forever, even the good, because stillness and serenity are not sustainable. That idea of peace is a nightmare for me. Serenity is beautiful, and it's nice to stay and play, but I still want a challenge. I don't want that quiet, simple peace always. I want exciting peace too, where I'm looking at my co-pilot, enjoying the flight because before we land, we know we've made it. There's a peace in action. This year, I pulled a tarot card for each month. September was death. The gut punch reaction to the word death is literal and physical, but I knew that that's not what this is. But when I pulled it back in January and thought about what I'd be up to, I figured at this point in the year, I would be completing the last semester of my program, and it was just an end to college. And now that September's come to a close, it was an end. I mean, my college end came earlier than that. That happened over in the summer. Like I couldn't have guessed what my cards would have meant for my year. Not in a million years. But to many other things, there were many endings in September. I just got the Wake Me Up When September Ends song in my head because that's how my jokes work. Even things that I just started in September were ready to end. With that, I'm going to tell you that I sold my house and I've been thrilled about it. I've been looking at establishing a new relationship with money. Selling my home was a big part of that. Manifesting the actual sale of it when I cleaned the house, cleansing the doorways with positivity portals in mind, washing the handles with change and turning, and just having intention in every ounce of that house that I touched as I left it, to sell it with love, for the right person to walk in the door, to hold that handle and know this is mine before putting money down. That's the person I wanted to buy my house, to feel what it's supposed to feel like in that house. I put so much energy into how I would feel when it was sold and how I would feel when that money hits my account and how happy I would feel. And I thought about me telling the story in the future of like, oh, it happened so fast. And like, I really played out this fantasy future in a small time frame. I played with it emotionally in a very grand way and in very silly ways. But on a Friday, my house went on the market. I started doing a new cross-stitch project from SpongeBob SquarePants. I made Mr. Krabs' millionth dollar because we're having fun with money. My house was on the market on Friday. I had 3 offers on Saturday night, and I accepted one of the offers on Sunday morning. And everything panned out exactly as it needed to. The sale went through, and the day after we signed papers and the house was officially not mine, I finished my cross-stitch project, and it like sealed the deal, you know? But selling the house was as far as I planned out through all of this. So now I'm in this space with all of these skills, feeling okay, but I don't know what to do. I found a place to land, and I was so relieved to find the land that now I've landed, and it's time to embark again. And this is where the next stage of land comes into play. That first land was just getting grounded. Now I have to explore, but I have to choose where to go. So I stopped believing that our souls would reincarnate as individual units, like that singular Allison does not show up as a gazelle in her next life or come back as a person doing person things that was once Allison the person. But the defined pieces that make up present day Allison will scatter and find their way to like energy. When I pass, if someone calls in vitality, faith, or cool ideas, maybe they'll get some of mine. But when they get mine, it'll be colored by me and they'll have to unpack it to understand it for themselves. But if you can only understand it within those limitations, it can feel challenged. And that's why I like to simplify as much as possible, is because the more that I can understand it simply, maybe we can share it simply. But when I call in something and it feels like there's resistance, like a healthy relationship with money, it's likely because I'm holding on to something that I haven't let go yet, or something that I haven't quite yet seen. So it's like when this energy pulls through, it's like a caravan. You want the passenger, but you're going to have to find a place to park that car. So if it feels like a busload of bullshit in your field while you're working towards something better, it is okay to sit with it and to stop fighting it and to let itself work its way through, even if it sounds like it was written for a child. listen to it, and sit with it. And eventually you can let go or work with it. The soul family aspect to me now is more like when you call in whatever thing it is that you want, you have to welcome its family. If you're going to plant peonies, it's going to attract ants. If you want that plant, you're going to have the bugs. If you call in a faith of humanity, you're going to have to get past a binary mindset because too much shit comes in with that. There's tertiary unions that you're going to have to welcome. Concepts are delivered in pods. You can't order it solo. It comes with extras. You've got to find a place for it. So when there's outright resistance, like this thing keeps happening to me and I keep swatting it away and cutting ties and swearing it off. And why is it back in my field? You are not cursed, and this is not Murphy's Law. It's something that's tied to you that you're continuing to utilize, request, or explore. If you have a death grip on the specifics of needing this one thing, and you have a death grip on the specifics of despising this one thing, you'll never experience the beauty of what it's supposed to become because you don't trust the way that it works. You're going to have to learn to live with that energy. And that's why alchemy is so important. Choose your change and look for it to be delivered. I wanted to talk about how cool it was that my house sold that fast. While I was sitting there in those times where my house was on the market and I was getting feedback and like, okay, we've got an open house set up and we've got this set up and we've got this set up. Yeah, in the fever of it, I could not live with that energy. I struggled. That day to day, I was having the death grip on the specifics. And when it came time to make decisions, that's when you let go. That's when you trust that you did everything you're supposed to do. You know you're doing the right thing and you are exactly where you need to be. And there's a decision in front of you. Look for it to be delivered. A few weeks ago, I saw a thread on Instagram and it said, I did the ChatGPT manifestation thing this morning and I cried ugly tears. And that stopped me in my tracks because I'm like, what manifestation is getting you to cry that you're so freaking happy about? How does that work? What does that mean? She says to prompt ChatGPT, and once it gives you the prompt, you hit read aloud, and then you sit back and imagine along with it. And that's your manifestation. So the prompt here, you tell ChatGPT, I would like you to act as an expert on the law of attraction. I'm going to give you a list of my wildest dreams, and I want you to write a 5-minute story of the day in the life of my dreams. Here are some of my wildest dreams. And then you list it. Sit back and listen. And all these responses were coming through about how it's such a beautiful, magical experience. So I discovered this thread after my kids had gone to sleep. And it's a peaceful, quiet night. And it was a perfect time to lean into something like this. And before I even get to ChatGPT, I'm like 12 levels deep in my head because that is a hard prompt to fulfill. It's a loaded construct. In order for me to attempt to give this to ChatGPT to do this manifestation, I have to consider for the first time in a very long time, what are my wildest dreams? Early September, I found that thread. And I still have not done that the ChatGPT manifestation part. But what I have done is add to that list. I've added more and more value to the bucket of dreams. And I still don't have that sense of direction. But this garden, this dream garden, we're caring for it. We're cultivating the soil. I'm dreaming of my brightest tomorrow and trimming away the behavior and the parts of me that future Allison doesn't want to be associated with so we can focus our energy toward this inevitable growth. Land is settling in and setting on. Land is taking off and land is coming down. Land is somehow property and also the entire journey.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Unravel with Allison. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Unravel with Allison. Follow, subscribe, keep in touch, and stay up to date on new episodes. If you'd like to support the show, start with the algorithm. Rates and reviews always help to spread the message. Thank you for being here, and I'll catch you next week.